Hi, everyone. Welcome to Entrepreneurship by Design with Dr. C. I am so glad you're here with us today because we have an incredible guest with us, Rod. Rod is the president and COO of Money Insights. He is the co-host of Money Insights podcast, where he and his business partner, Christian Allen, expound on the benefits of alternative investing and business ownership. He's a longtime entrepreneur, beginning with his education as an MBA with an emphasis in entrepreneurship. He practices what he preaches with a wide variety of investments, including business, real estate, in many forms, fund investing, etc. Thank you so much, Rod, for being here today. It is such a pleasure to have you, and I would love for you to just dive into your journey, how you got here today, and then we can go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So, I'm going to go back to my journey beginning when I was in college, and I just so happened to find Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, while I was in going to BYU in school. Mm-hmm. And that really shaped my journey. So I was going to school in marketing communications for my undergrad. Mm-hmm. And so I just started mapping out a course where I would be able to have my own business, be the business owner. Mm-hmm. So after graduation, I went and worked for a company for a little while, and then went back and did an MBA. I felt like that was important to learn the ropes, learn how to look at the finances and everything inside of a business and understand how to run it. And I actually thought I knew what my business was going to be when I started the MBA. But what I quickly learned is that I can't dictate the market. And so my idea would only work if there was a market for that. But what it did is it opened my mind to the idea that really I don't know necessarily now what my business is going to be, just that's what I want to do. So in the MBA, I focused on entrepreneurship, and again, by the time I graduated, I was still working full time for somebody else, didn't know what it was going to be. But then within a couple of years, I had an opportunity to go buy a furniture business. So it was a guy who had been very successful in his furniture business. He had also done some cabinets, and he was doing so much work on both sides. He finally got to the point where he had to make a decision. Am I going to do cabinets or am I going to do furniture? So he went with the cabinets. I bought his furniture business. The timing wasn't great, though. That was 2007. Mm-hmm. So about roughly a year later, everything crashes. And so it was kind of like good news, bad news. The bad news is that it crashed. The good news was it was just so dramatic that it was very clear that there was no purpose for me to try to stick it out and kind of get past that. I needed to start looking for something else that was going to be, more fitting to getting going. So that's how I got into what I'm doing now in financial services, and really just kind of put me on the path with where I met my partner, et cetera. We can get into more detail on that, but ultimately getting to a place where with that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, sticking with it, getting past the challenges, and getting to a place where now we have a very successful, thriving business.
Sometimes we go into something thinking, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Yeah. This makes sense. And then you completely do a complete turn of that. And I'm curious, what was your initial interest in even starting your own business? What was that motivation behind it?
Yeah, I didn't grow up in a family where there was the kind of this entrepreneurial thing. It was more traditional, like, hey, go work for someone else, go to school, get a good education, and then go to work for someone else and provide value there. So it really was that just reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and for anyone who's not familiar with it, he focuses on, and really it's actually the sequel is probably more of what helped me do this, but it's called the cash flow quadrant. And he breaks into 4 categories, our opportunities for working and building wealth. And on the left-hand side is the employee quadrant, and then the self-employed quadrant. And those two, you pay more in taxes. You just are forced to work harder and whatever. And not that there's anything against working hard, but it's when you move to the right-hand side of the quadrant where you can be a business owner and an investor, where you can really take advantage of a lot better tax situation and just have a better chance to build your wealth. And so kind of catching that vision of being a business owner is what inspired me to then want to do this. And again, the journey was very different than I envisioned at the time,
Yeah.
but here I am.
I love that. And I think too, we don't always know what bumps we're going to hit along the
Yeah.
road. And I'm really curious, with your background in entrepreneurship and then also getting your MBA in education, how did that influence your approach to investing and business ventures?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I really wanted to know the inner workings of business.
Mhm.
I figured, hey, if I'm going to be, not that I've wanted to do it all myself, right?
Yeah.
But one of the books that I came across in my MBA program, it's called E-Myth, and basically the E stands for entrepreneurial, so it's the entrepreneurial myth, and by Michael Gerber. And basically he just spelled out, hey, if you're going to own your own business, you might as well run it or set it up as if you're going to franchise it. And what that means is that you set up processes that, whether it's initially, if it's just you're filling all of those roles and doing all of those processes yourself, but by being methodical in the way you set them up and kind of create this this system that can thrive as if you were going to franchise it and just, hand the manual off to someone else and say, hey, you go run another, parallel business. But by doing that, you're basically setting yourself up for the best success possible. Yeah. And so then, quite literally, in our cases, we've been building our business, and initially it was just my partner Christian and I, and then as we've added different members, then it's taking those processes and you continually refine them. It's not like you got it all figured out, right away, but really, again, it's that focus on making sure that you have the right processes in place that accomplish what you want to accomplish. So you're very intentional in what are we trying to accomplish here? Not just the product or service that you provide, but how you provide it, what you want, what kind of an experience you want your clients to have, and then just basically reverse engineering that and building processes that accomplish those things.
That makes so much sense. And I'm so curious because I know part of that is being able to build processes so it flows, makes things streamlined. And especially, I haven't heard of that book, which I'm surprised because I read a lot, but now I'm like, oh, I'm intrigued. So, yeah. But I do agree. It's setting things up so you don't have to be in it all the time. And part of that was bridging with having a partner with Christian. What did that look like? How did that come about, building that partnership?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it just kind of evolved. So when I got into the financial services business, Christian had already been working in it for several years and was a manager, kind of building a team. And he recruited me to be on his team. So that initially was our starting point, our relationship. And he is someone who's very successful, but he recognizes his weaknesses. And he saw in me some of those things that could help him kind of bridge that gap. And so as a kind of a part of that team, he was saying, hey, can you plug in and do these different things? And that's how it started. But just little by little, our world became a little more interwoven, and likewise, like in the same way that he was looking to me for kind of fill the gap on some of the things that he had weak points. Same thing for me. His strengths are like huge in terms of where my weaknesses are. And so it was like a really good match. And so I would say over the next maybe 4 or 5 years, we started working a little more together before we then actually decided kind of formally, hey, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to form a company and be partners and move forward in that way.
I love that. And I think too, it just takes off some of the pressure of having to do everything on your own, but really finding that beautiful bridge of, okay, these are my strengths, these are mine, and then being able to pull from each other's and weaknesses and realizing, okay, how can I fill this gap and make it work for everyone across the board? And part of that is just building a team, building systems. And part of building your systems, I'm really curious, I wanted to go back to that. What have been some of the tools that you've used on the back end to continue to facilitate growth in your business?
Yeah, one of the challenges with the financial services business is it's so deep seated in like old ways of doing things, right? So when we first were working, it was all about, who can we meet in person? and having a formal office that people can come into, et cetera. Well, in 2014, 2015, that all started to change for us. We started doing more business online, meeting with people across the country through Zoom or through phone calls, and pretty soon we realized it a lot. But put it this way, I was commuting 30 minutes each way to get on phone calls and internet and whatnot. It's like, well, what's the purpose, right? So we actually shut down our traditional kind of office. Yeah. And since then, we've just worked virtually. We've had a virtual office. He's worked out of a home office. I worked out of a home office. And what's funny is at the time, we almost had to hide that, right? In 2015, having home offices wasn't unusual, but it was a little bit kind of like the stigma of like, oh, is it like your mom's basement or something? Like that kind of thing. And not that there's anything wrong with that either, but again, that stigma. So, but obviously with what's happened since then, a lot of people work the way we do. It just so happened that we were kind of a little bit ahead of the curve on that. What that's allowed us to do is to be very focused in the marketing and the kind of the push for the people that we want to work with. In other words, if we live in Utah, not a huge population, relative to other places in the country, if we were kind of forcing what we want to do inside of the traditional way of the way we were doing business, we would not have had nearly the success as we have been able to have by expanding that geographically, especially to really find the people that really can plug in and get the most value out of what we're doing. And that's really what has made a huge difference for us.
I love that. And I think too, it's just being able to realize, all the big tech companies, if you think back, started from either the kitchen or the basement. Right. I feel like you were ahead of the curve for sure. And more people are now open to that idea and doing it regularly. I know I do that too, but not a basement, but the kitchen. Yeah. So I think when you're building a business, there's a lot of ups and downs in that regard. What have been some of the obstacles that you guys have faced in building your business from starting from scratch and really making it what it is today?
Sure. Yeah. I would say some of the big obstacles is just figuring out ways to plug into our demographic, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we've been able to do is we have partnerships with people. So for example, other podcasters who have a following, so to speak, or listenership of people who are very specific to the types of people that work well with what we're doing, and creating a partnership there. So kind of like a joint venture where they like what we're doing, they're promoting it, they're using it themselves. And so then as they promote it, we can plug them in and they can have some profit sharing with that. But it just kind of creates a completely different level of a starting point for people, because they get to know and like and appreciate the opinions of this influencer. And then when they say, hey, you should check out these guys and what they're doing because it has provided a lot of value for me, then even before we've met with them, they already have, at least they're a little more open-minded, a little more, warm as a starting point. And then what we've done is we've created webinars and other content that they can take in on their own time, in their own space, before even deciding to meet with anyone, so that they can get a better grasp for what it is and decide whether it makes sense. So we've tried to create this kind of like organic process where it's very intentional, very specific in what we've done, but for the journey of the potential, client, plugging into that, taking in information, and then deciding, am I going to meet with them, so that we're not feeling like we're having to chase people down and do that kind of thing. Like by the time they meet with us, it's because they know enough about it and they know they want to at least consider it. And so, I would say our success ratio on that for people who go through that process is, 40 to 50% of the people who contact us through that process end up doing business with us.
Absolutely. It's creating warm leads and knowing that,
Yeah,
okay, this is lead generation can be really challenging when you're
right.
trying to do so much on the front end. But if you have things in place to really move people along, so the people that are serious about taking action, it doesn't waste anybody's time. And they
Right.
also already have all the information they need to make an educated decision and
Yeah.
to move forward. And because I know you've worked with so many different individuals, I would love to know just one or two success stories of the work you guys are both doing.
Yeah. So we, just to give you a kind of a more general idea first, we tend to work with a lot of people who are high income, a lot of physicians, dentists, and basically where they are is they're in, again, this high income place.
Mhm.
They've worked hard. They've taken a lot of time in education and whatnot. So they're usually a later place in their life, by the time they're kind of starting their career and getting this going. So they feel a lot of pressure to really make the most of this high income and turn it into something that can give them a chance to retire at some point, right? So our kind of tag is we'll take you from high income to high net worth, and so one person that comes to mind is a dentist who has been very successful in building a lot of different dental and orthodontic offices across multiple states, with a lot of different partners along the way. And that model has led to a lot of success for him. And then also he invests in, we call it alternative assets. That tends to be kind of the focus of the things we focus on. And by that, I mean, not what I would consider traditional is stock market, 401ks, that kind of thing. So instead of that, we focus more on both businesses and real estate and other, oil and gas and bond and funds and different things that you can invest in that are not Wall Street. And so this person I'm speaking of, he's been very successful building his business. Now he's investing in real estate and other things like that. And what we've done in working with him is built basically a better foundation from which he is doing his investing. So in other words, we're not offering the real estate. What we're doing is we're offering a better way to flow your money in and out of the real estate to create an additional layer of profitability while you're doing that investing, or even inside of his business as he's, making capital expenditures, capital investments, to build his business or to open up a new office or whatever. We're creating a better foundation piece from which to do that. So kind of the way we describe that is creating additional layer of profitability in addition to what you are able to grow. And again, it's just a cash flow thing. What most people will do is they'll build up what I call the opportunity fund, the money they're going to be out investing, build it up inside of a bank account or a money market or something like that, take it and invest it, create cash flow that all back and build it back up and go invest in something else. Right. Well, the reason they choose a bank account is because it's safe, right? You don't have to worry about losing money like you would if you put it in a stock account or something like that. And then secondly, it's liquid. It's ready to use when they're ready to use it. But the problem is it's really not doing anything for them when it's sitting there, between deals. Right. So what we're doing is setting up some specialized life insurance policies where we can create a very predictable 5% tax-free return, 5+%. And that creates a foundation piece where when they're ready to use the funds, they actually don't take the money out of the account. What they're doing is taking a loan against that money. Their money stays there and continues to grow and compound at that 5% rate. But now they have this other people's money, right? The loaned money that they're out investing, putting in their business, putting, into real estate or whatnot. And so literally they're creating value in two places at the same time. So they're creating that return with the investment, the same return they were going to get anyway, but then having some additional growth that's happening for them in the meantime. So, taking this gentleman as an example, this dentist, he has, again, because he's been so successful, millions of dollars flowing in and through these investments and doing really well, creating really good returns off of that. But in the meantime, having this additional return that's coming to him in a very predictable and safe way.
I love this because I think too, it's just for people to hear there's other ways because a lot of people are like, okay, well, I'll invest and I'll go into the stock market and like that's unpredictable. And I have my 401k and I can do that. But realizing that there's so many other opportunities alternatively of investing and just knowing that you have the money, how can you just repurpose it and make it grow and work for you versus against you?
Right.
And I love that that's what you guys focus on. And I'm really curious if you could just share some of the key benefits you've experienced through alternative investing and owning
Right.
your own businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in investing, there's almost too much of a focus on the return. And I'm not saying that's not important, right? Because it's absolutely critical the kind of return you're able to generate. But when you look at the kind of return that you can get off of an investment, it's about more than just, again, it's more just the return. So I'll give you an example. Some people will compare, like, again, just stock market kind of growth, what we're doing over there versus maybe investing in real estate. And do I think that consistently you can create as good, if not better, return in real estate than the stock market? I do. Right. And obviously, a lot of different ways to invest in the stock market, a lot of different ways to invest in real estate. But generally speaking, I would say you can create a better return. But it goes a lot further than that, because I can also create a lot more tax benefits when I invest in real estate that I can't really do when I'm investing in the stock market or a lot of other, traditional types of things. And so, when you look at that and you say, so for example, let's say my stated return is like 20% on this investment in the real estate. When I include the tax benefits that I created from the tax savings, it actually can become more like a 35% return. And nothing else changed except the fact that where I invested allowed me to create these additional tax efficiencies, tax savings, so that my return is a lot higher than it otherwise would have been if I was investing in something where I wasn't able to create those kind of tax benefits. So return is one, tax benefits is one. You're in more control in what you invest in when you go into the alternative space. You can be more, it can be a situation where you are creating cash flow that can replace your working income so that you get to a place where you have enough just free, the cash flowing assets kicking out an income. So, and that can replace your working income. So those are just a few examples, but benefits that you can get in the alternative space that you can't get otherwise. And, I'm going to speak to the choir here, but having your own business is a huge way, again, not only to create higher returns. I don't know that you can create as high returns in the stock market as you can running your own business, right? Creating that value, working, blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen. But just creating something really cool that's very valuable. Certainly that's been true for our business. There's nothing else we could have invested in over the last 10 years that would have created as much benefit to us, not just in the income, but then the actual value of the business itself now. We couldn't have done that anywhere else.
Right. No, that's so true. And just even thinking about it, because a lot of people have a fear of the risk of investing.
Sure.
How do you balance the risks and rewards associated with alternative investing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And first I'll start with this. There's this idea out there that the only way I can create higher returns is if I take on more risk. And I'm going to debunk that a little bit. Please. Because we call it risk adjusted return. When I'm investing in the stock market, it's true. If I want to create higher returns there, I do have to take on more risk. But when you switch over to something like real estate or even a business, right? And I say that realizing that, the stats are real, like, 8 out of 10 businesses fail within the first 5 years, right? However, if you break it down, you look and say, okay, but what about the 2 that survived? What was it that was different about those? And usually it has something to do with experience, knowledge, being tapped into the core of where you're trying to build that business, et cetera. And so again, this idea of risk adjusted return, if I know I'm one of those 2 out of 10, or in other words, I've built an expertise in something, I have the contacts that I need to make my business thrive. I have processes, right, that I'm building in to make that happen. Then I can go in with a lot more confidence, and it's a lot less risky for me to do that than it would be to do almost anything else. Right. And so similarly, when you invest in real estate, if you're just barely getting started, then yes, it's going to be a little more risky. But because you have to get your feet under you, you might make a few mistakes along the way. Again, not unlike starting a business. But once you have that expertise, whether it's flipping houses or whether it's, investing in a syndication, with someone else who has that expertise or whatever, right? A lot of different ways you can do it. But once you have that knowledge base, that expertise, the process, then it's much less risky. And again, like I said earlier, you're in more control with that. So you're kind of just putting it in your own hands instead of thrown against the wall and whatever mutual fund or the 401k offers, I have to choose from those. And instead of that, I'm like creating my own destiny in a way.
Yes.
And that's going back to your question on risk. To me, that's a lot less risky in the long run than just kind of putting it out there and whatever happens.
Exactly. It's like betting on yourself, right?
Right. Yep.
And I'm just, even with all the entrepreneurs that you've worked with, and mostly like physicians and people who have high income already that are investing, what advice would you give someone who is considering alternative investing and maybe wants to start their own business?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that's really what we've tried to build our business around. So I gave an example of one of the specific solutions that we help people who are investing in the alternative world, but we feel like the loudest voice in the room is the traditional side, right? The Wall Street engine, the 401k and just regular, traditional retirement plans. It's to the point where most Americans think that's the only way to invest. Right. What we're trying to do is be a voice out there, kind of build this kind of energy toward at least helping people understand what other options are available, what it means to kind of look into the alternative space. And so as a kind of fun starting point, we have what we call our investor quiz. So people can go to moneyinsightsiq.com and take our investor quiz. And then what that does is it's a few questions you walk through. And then what it does is it plugs you into a kind of a curated curriculum of things that we've put out there in terms of our podcast and webinars and white papers and just a lot of different things, so that you can start to see, what opportunities are available and how you can get started, because that's usually the hardest part, right? Even if someone says, okay, yeah, I get it, real estate, or I get it, having your own business can be valuable, but where do I start? And that, I think what we've tried to do with that is just create a clean starting point for people to start to become educated, because that's the first key, right? And then inside of that, we have things like our 10-step recipe to, building wealth and things like that, so that you can begin to see kind of step by step, okay, this is how I get started. This is how I start getting educated on what it looks like to start investing in the alternative investment space. And because that's one of the cool things that for what I get to do every day and meet with people who are doing this, who are out there, kind of creating their own journey, that it's really easy to hire a broker and say, here's all my money, go and invest it for me. Right. But in my experience, in my view, not the best way to actually build wealth. The people that we're seeing are what I call like the quarterback, right? They're not trying to become an expert in all things, but they're taking ownership of their future, of this quest to build wealth, so that when they say, oh yeah, I want to look into what it means to invest in real estate or in these, ATM funds or whatever it might be. And so they're kind of directing what's happening, relying on experts as they're doing it, but they're the one in control. They're still a kind of do-it-yourselfer in the sense that they're keeping, control of that, the direction. and then just plugging into experts as needed.
Mm. That's very true, because I think a lot of people don't know where to start, but I love that you have the quiz
Yeah.
there. It's a very clean start of just, okay, well, where do I go? How do I
Yeah.
do this? But I think it's taking action in your own hands and having that ownership and accountability, like you're saying, of where you want your money to go. Because I think there's been a lot of traditional ways that we've been taught, just like when we're younger, in
Right.
at least my day, go to school, get a good job, and you'll be set for life. And
Yep.
that's not the reality anymore by any means. At least that's what I think. But
Right.
in your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions and myths around alternative investing? I know you already talked about one myth, but is there any others that you hear a lot or have experienced?
Yeah. And I think part of it goes back to what you asked about the risk.
Yeah.
The misconception that it is just more risky.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to me, it doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Another one is that, well, here's the irony of it.
Mm-hmm.
What we talk about as alternative is actually the more long-term, the more tried and true, right? So what could be more like just old than owning land, right?
Yeah.
Having real estate.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last, 40, 50 years,
Mm-hmm.
the Wall Street engine has made us, think that that's the only way to go. And so this I think that the way to state that misconception is just a lack of familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
Because let me put it this way. If you were to ask someone who is investing in the 401k, has been for years, for their life, right? They're 60 years old. They're getting close to retirement. That's where they've built their wealth. Familiarity doesn't necessarily equal knowledge, right? In other words, okay, so ask them, how's a 401k work? What are the costs you're paying? Do you know what you're investing in and who's making the decisions on where those investments are being made? And for 99% of the population, they would just have no idea how to answer those questions.
Right.
But then if you ask the same questions on an alternative asset, well, real estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to buy a piece of property and the costs involved? And you wouldn't know the answers to those things. But the irony of it is that you're on equal footing as it relates to the knowledge base,
Mm-hmm.
meaning we don't know much.
Right.
But just that familiarity of, but I was always told to invest in the 401k. Everybody I know puts money in the 401k. My HR director says I should. Dave Ramsey says I should, right? All these really loud voices saying 401k is the way to go. So it creates a level of familiarity. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you can, when someone is able to open their mind and see that there are other options out there, you can become just as familiar and get that knowledge base. So now you can make more of it. So it doesn't have to be this black box, right? You can open it up and learn. And that's just what we're encouraging people to do, is look and at least see what's available out there. If you look at it and you finally decide, hey, yeah, no, I just feel like I'm better off sticking with the traditional, then fine. But at least, open your eyes a little bit, take a look at it and see what is there. And if it does provide that opportunity for you to really take off, build wealth in a different way, then you're much better off by having taken a look.
Absolutely. It's being open-minded, right? Understanding that there are the traditional ways and those can work. However, just being aware of what's out there, because I know there's a lot of opportunities. And sometimes we just don't know that they're available to us, or even how to go about it. But how do you stay informed of the latest trends or opportunities when it comes to business landscape, but also alternative investing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having a community. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do, is build a community where people can plug in, because I would say most of the people that we work with, when they're sitting around the dinner table, or when they're at a family reunion or at work, most of the people around them don't think the way that they do. Yeah. Right. It still is true to say that most people in the United States invest in the traditional way, and they don't know much about this kind of alternative way of thinking. But if you can build or join a community of like-minded people who are on the journey together, then as you run into things, you say, oh, hey, I heard about this. What do you guys think? Chances are other people in the community have seen it or are participating in it or whatever, have an opinion. And so it is a huge way to just stay up with the trends and stay up with the information. And it's not that you as an individual have to always, keep up with all of that. I don't, right? I'm trying to be out there and helping people be educated on it, but I wouldn't say that I feel like I'm an expert in all of these different ways, that I'm always keeping up on what's happening in these different things. I'm part of the community too. And so I'm tapping into the knowledge base of other people around me as well, trying to bring my expertise, but then also, relying on others for information. And so I would say that can be a huge benefit in specifically what you were asking in terms of keeping up with things, but also just, staying focused, right? Not losing the momentum that you're trying to build, just because so many people around us aren't as, aware or looking for help, like in that alternative space.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with the community piece, because I think we can't know everything. Well, I know we can't know everything as much as we might want to. Yeah. It's hard to know it all, but I think when we're able to have that community, you can tap into that. We're better together. That's what I always believe, because we might not know everything, but somebody else knows something that can lead to another understanding of something new or different, or how to navigate it, because we have the tools in order to tap into the community. Yeah. And I'm really curious, because I know you've already given so much insight, but what are maybe your top 2 tips for entrepreneurs that are on this journey, in particular in investing, but also just as a generalization?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say number 1 tip is don't get too myopic in one direction. In other words, one, thing that I see with a lot of people is they'll say, okay, well, what's the best investment? Like where's the best thing out there? And there is no one best. Well, I shouldn't say that. There probably is. We just don't know what it is. We can't pick it ahead of time. When 10 years down the line, we'll look back and say, oh, it looks like it was that. But today we can't know. So, but I think it's a mistake if someone says, oh, real estate is the best, like the only way to go. And then they put everything into that. And then, 2008 happens, and all of a sudden, that blows up. So what you want to do is just make sure that you are aware of the risks that exist with any one investment, and then make decisions accordingly, right? So again, can there be a best, and can there be something that someone focuses more of their attention on? Absolutely. Personally, that's been our business. Right. There's nothing else that we're putting more time and energy and effort into than we are in our business. But that doesn't mean that we are only investing in our business. We do invest in the products that we sell. We invest in real estate. We invest in ATM funds and et cetera. And so just being careful not to get too single focused, because there's a lot of extra risk that comes with that. But as you're assessing risk and you say, okay, well, this, for example, real estate, one of the risks with real estate is lack of liquidity. Okay, so if I'm looking at other options to invest in, what can I invest in that still gives me a good return, but I have a little more access to the cash, right? Yeah, et cetera. So that's just one example, but those are the kinds of thought processes you want to go through as you're analyzing the different options, and not getting just too hyper focused on one thing.
I like that. It's like diversifying your income too. And that's where I think the common thread has been, of just knowing that if you put all your eggs in one basket, that can be detrimental, just like 2008, what happened with the real estate market. But just understanding there is other opportunities, and just really being able to grow it in different capacities. And I know you guys are growing so much as well. Just, I'm really curious, what are your long-term goals or aspirations as an entrepreneur, but how do you plan to continue to expand your investment portfolio and business ventures in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the first piece it's that education piece and that community, the combination of those two, because the things that we've seen that have been the most successful so far in our own business, but also in what we've seen in other people, is that kind of community focus. So our ability to reach people who can plug in and get a lot of value out of what we're doing depends on our ability to get their attention to begin with, right? And so we're doing a lot of things in a variety of different ways. So like when I mentioned the investor quiz, I talked about, we have webinars out there. We're doing our podcast. We put white papers out. We know different people learn in different ways. And so we want to, as much as possible, get out there. We do ads in Facebook and Google and whatnot. We want to, kind of spread the message as far as we can to capture those people who, well, here's a typical journey, right? Someone who was more on the traditional side, and then they start to feel like, man, I just didn't realize there would be so many costs, or I'm not comfortable with the level of volatility that I just have to be okay with, right? According to the experts, and I'm just not okay with them. What else is out there? And so what we want to do is be in a position where when they're at that position of transition, that we're someone that they see, and then we can become a resource for them in seeing not only what else is out there, but what that journey can look like for them to transition, pivot from traditional, and move more into the alternative space. I think that those are the keys to our future growth.
I love it. And I can't wait to see more people being educated on this, because I think it's something that is definitely the future, and just being able to diversify our incomes, but also feeling more risque in a calculated way to be able to grow wealth, and maybe even generational wealth too, for a lot of people. But
Absolutely.
I think it's amazing what you both are doing, you and Christian. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to have you on today. But where can people find you, find your podcast, everything you guys are up to? We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
Yeah, absolutely. So our podcast is just called the Money Insights Podcast. So you find us on all, Apple or all the different platforms. I already mentioned before, moneyinsightsiq.com is a great way you can plug in, take the quiz, and then again, we'll kind of have this curated curriculum for you to plug into. Our base website is moneyinsightsgroup.com. So that gives you a few different places you can go to find us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rod, for being on today, just sharing your journey, all the ups and downs, everything in between. But I really do love what you're doing, because it's helping people have more financial literacy, even if they already have a great income. It's just being able to diversify it. And I think I'll probably say that to him blue in the face, because I think it's really important.
Absolutely.
But I do appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. Great to be on.
Absolutely. Thank you. And make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. What was the biggest takeaway from Rod today? I'm sure he would love to see that comment, and we will see you on the next episode.